Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Multifamily Chronicles. I'm your host, Adrian Danila. Our guest today is Aaron Sandager. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Thank you, Adrian, and thank you for having me. Excited to talk today.
Aaron is the Senior Vice President of Sales at Remote Lock. Aaron, I want to ask you to start by walking us through your professional journey. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Adrian. I born and raised in the Midwest, so grew up and ended up going to the University of Minnesota. Had an uncle that tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, you should get into sales. There's some really good money in sales." And so, as a young, outgoing, pretty dynamic kid, I was like, "Hey, listen, I want to make money, so I'm all in." So studied marketing at the University of Minnesota, but they had an emphasis on sales. So got a job right out of college in tech sales. I was actually working for a VAR or a value-added reseller for Hewlett Packard, and so got into kind of high tech sales from there. Ended up working directly for Hewlett Packard for a number of years. And then a better part of my career was with a Fortune 500 large data storage company called EMC². And so spent 14 years there, really grew up and matured in my sales career at that company. And then about 7 years ago, took a look at my career and said, hey, it was a hardware kind of centric solution. My whole career was selling hardware, basically big tech hardware. And so I thought I wanted to redefine my career, really get into software defined storage, SaaS solutions, and so forth. And so have since then had an opportunity and been a part of some really exciting, some unicorn startups. Went from there to located out in Palo Alto in Silicon Valley. Had a great opportunity to learn under Bipple, their CEO, who was a fantastic person and somebody who's really connected out there in Silicon Valley. And then from there, just bleeded into the physical security space through an opportunity that I had to work for a company called Pivot3. And so that's what got me into software defined storage and then Bold Group before the current job here at Remote Lock.
For someone that starts in sales today, looking up to someone like you, Senior VP of Sales, you've accomplished so many things with so many great companies. What are some pieces of advice that you have for them?
Yeah, the biggest thing is don't put yourself in a box. It's easy to feel like you've got to choose a path in sales. In other words, an industry or a specific technology. That's not the case. I think at the end of the day, if you look at my career, I've had seven, eight, and worked for seven, eight different companies and all having different kind of solutions. So don't put pressure on yourself to feel like you've got to put yourself in a box and you've got to choose an industry or a technology and stick with it. I think the other thing is just get out there, right? Build your connections, build your connections on LinkedIn, build your professional connections through different peers that you have. And that's a big piece to get to know the industry and get to know the space.
With over 2 decades of experience in sales, Aaron, what would you say are some things that in a tech sales environment, what are some things that have evolved, have changed, and what are some things that have remained constant all these years?
Yeah, obviously been doing this for 24 years, and that sounds like a big number, and a lot has evolved. First off, it's how we do business. Obviously, most recently with COVID, with the work from home aspect and losing that interaction of an office environment, how we do business is very different. I talk to my sales team and tell stories about my first days as a salesperson. I would go into the office, I would plan out my day. I would go to the printer. I would print out my MapQuest mappings of my different locations and visits. And every sales meeting was in person. It was visiting the front desk. It was checking in. It was meeting with that person in person. A lot of times lunches and dinners. So everything was in person. And nowadays we're doing a lot virtually. We're doing a lot over Zoom and over video like we're doing today. The other thing is data at your fingertips. Again, when I started 24 years ago, it was get out the yellow pages. It was find contacts through whatever data was available, but it was very limited. And now we have Google, we have everything at our fingertips to be able to go research and be much more educated around the different industries that we're calling on. Now, I joke and really from yellow pages to chat GPT.
And this particular podcast is geared towards multifamily, the multifamily space. How much of your business is focused on the multifamily space?
A majority of our business is focused on the multifamily space. It's an industry that we've really focused on, especially over the last 3 years. The company's been around for 12. cut our teeth and got started in the vacation rental, short term rental space. But as we've evolved as a company and as we've built the technology to be really a truly enterprise access control technology, we felt it was a no brainer for us to go attack this space. And so we are heavily focused on that space. We expect our revenues to be anywhere from 50 to 60% from that space. And so very excited about what's happening right now in the multifamily prop tech space.
You said earlier, how do we do business? You said that. How do we do business? So question for you is next. How do you approach business in a multifamily space? What are some specific things that a company that's like looking to enter the multifamily space right now will need to know in order for them to be successful?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is understanding the ecosystem of multifamily. It's not, we bring one piece of the puzzle to bear to market, but there's so many other pieces. And it's really for me, again, and as I've been with Remote Lock, I've been new to really studying this space. And there's so many elements and things that are important to a property manager, regionals, large prop tech companies and property managers, and as well as owners, and understanding and putting yourself in the mindset of what's a day in the life of a property manager, what's important to them, and then how does the technology that I sell fit into that puzzle, and then understanding and being close to the other ecosystem partners that are out there, the PMSs, for example, the lifestyle and amenity management companies and software companies. So there's a number of things that you've got to understand that help you realize you're just one piece.
I want to talk a little bit about the products and or services that Remote Lock offers. Could you share some of the high level things with us? What are some product services that you're selling?
Yeah, in summary, basically, we're managing and bringing a centralized solution for access control from curb to couch in multifamily properties. So think of starting with entry into gates, entry into parking ramps, into entry into common doors, into entry into unit doors, and entry into amenity doors like pools, gyms, and laundry. So we basically bring that together in a centralized single pane of glass for a property manager, fully integrated with the property management software that they use to allow for seamless management and automation of access control for their tenants.
At Remote Lock, what strategies do you implement to maintain a high performing sales organization in a field as dynamic as prop tech technology in general?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think this resonates across my career, and it fits right in with prop tech and with focusing on the multifamily market. And that is starting with extreme ownership. Starting with, I basically have an acronym called OLD. I don't know, how that came about, but maybe it's because I'm getting old. But own it is the first one, right? So extreme ownership, meaning own your territory, meaning own your decisions, own your mistakes, feel empowered to be able to make decisions and not have to go get approvals and multi-level approvals, but really owning what is yours, whether it be a territory, a region, a country, the world. Secondly, moving on, it's live it, right? You can't just use your words and say, hey, I'm going to own it. You've got to actually live it. And that's tied into continuous improvement. That's tied into from a multifamily perspective. Again, studying and understanding a day in the life of a property manager, studying and understanding a business like a Greystar. And then lastly, it's do it, right? It's pull up your bootstraps and every single day set goals and go accomplish and execute on those goals.
With over 2 decades in sale, Aaron, what is the most effective way of selling a product or a service? What is your sales approach? If we're just talking pure sales, right? What was the technique that you found the most persuasive, the best technique to sell? Could you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, so interesting enough, early in my career, I was given the book Spin Selling. And so I have implemented this technique, which is really starting with getting to know the customer and their pains and understanding kind of how to tie those into what they consider needs. There's wants and then there's needs. And so that using that spin selling, I recommend anybody that's listening go out. They actually have they've updated the version. So they have a newer version out that's really a good read. And I think it's really insightful when it comes to kind of enterprise selling. The other technique that I've used, again, since my early in my career is a technique called MEDIC. And MEDIC stands for basically measuring your campaign or your sale against these different things. M being the metric, right? What metric are we bringing to bear? Are we saving the company money? Are we reducing? What are we doing to allow a specific metric that we're solving for? E stands for economic buyer, knowing who holds the purse strings, who holds the budget, who is the end decision maker when it comes to the spend. That's the economic buyer. The two Ds, so it's two Ds in MEDIC. First one is decision process. What is their decision process? Do they have to go through certain approvals? Are there certain regions that have to be influencers in this decision? So really understanding how they're going to make this decision. And then the next D is decision criteria. So really understanding what are they looking for in a solution and how do they prioritize that? They may have 10 things they want, but if you can do the top 4 of those 10, you're really hitting the mark there. The I stands for identify pain, right? So it's really truly understanding, is there a pain? Again, is it a need or is it a want? If it's a need, it's a true pain. If it's a want, it's a nice to have. And then the C stands for champion, right? Being able to build champions within your organizations that you're calling on. And the true definition of a champion is not somebody who gets on a call or is in a meeting and tells you how great you are. It's somebody who behind closed doors, when you're not there, they're selling and they're promoting you and your brand and your technology and your solution internally to their organization.
Self-awareness in a ever-changing environment, it's crucial in any type of profession, any type of job, in life in general. What is your process for assessing and continuously improving your own performance, and how do you encourage your teams to do the same?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that does get missed and forgotten a lot of times in people's careers. And one of the things that I've tried to do, people talk about New Year's resolutions. Every January 1st for me, I try to level set and go, what can you do better this year to live in the moment? Be present. Be thinking about what you're doing right now, not what you're going to do tomorrow, what you have to do for the month. Be present, be in the moment, and really focus on the now. From me and the team perspective, it's daily evaluation. A lot of times we get so busy, we get through a day, a week, a month, and we've forgotten to look back and analyze, what did we do? What could we improve upon? What are the things that we learned? And I try to take the end, I actually time block it in my calendar. At the end of every day, I take 30 minutes and I analyze, how I did today. And so for my team, I also challenge them to do the same thing. And then the last thing is time blocking for development, like spending time on yourself and investing in yourself. And that development can be everything from studying the trade or the technology that your company brings to bear, but it can also be things like studying the market, right? Understanding the trends for multifamily as an example, understanding what are the trends in multifamily right now, studying and being a continued student and always learning, I think is just extremely important for that continuous development. And then the other thing that I do with my sales team is we do 360-degree assessments after every important sales meeting or internal meeting. And this really causes you to have to be open and honest with yourself, but also be open and honest to constructive criticism. And so I challenge my team to analyze me. How did I do in that meeting? Was there something that I could have improved upon? Was there something I could have done better? And vice versa. And so we go around for the folks that attended the meeting and we assess each other. And then from there, again, hopefully learn and take that feedback and get better.
Aaron, from your experience, how do you run your territory as a business within a business? And how do you instill this mindset in your sales team?
Yeah, this is the concept of changing the thinking of I'm working for this big company or a company versus I own my world. And my world, again, may be a territory, maybe a few states, maybe a region, maybe half the country, whatever that is, changing the thinking as far as think like a CEO. And I challenge my team every day. I'm like, think like you are the CEO of your business. And your business is whatever business that you're focused on. And I think that changing that mindset and then empowering them, because it's easy to say, oh yeah, I can think like a CEO, but I don't have the empowerment to make decisions like a CEO. I'm a big believer in giving them as much empowerment as I can to make quick decisions and fail fast and learn from those failures and get better. In other words, not having them have to go to me and go to their manager, and I have to go up to a CFO for every little question they have or approval they need. So giving them the power to make those decisions. And then
And
and the other thing I want to touch on really quick that just popped into my mind was territory plans, right? Really managing your business, running it as a territory and having a plan. Like a lot of people are like, yeah, I got a territory I'm just going after, and they're just spraying and praying versus having a plan. Who are your top 10? Who's your next 25? How are you daily touching those proactively, reaching out to them to prospect them?
Aaron, I'd like to touch on challenges next. What's been the most challenging aspect of selling software-defined server and storage solutions, and how have you overcome those challenges?
Yeah, so again, this was a past life of mine. So it's been about 7 years. That's a good question, making me have to go back to the memory bank. But the challenge in that space was the market was very crowded. There was a lot of competition. And then the addressable market in that market was really only Fortune 500 companies, mostly public companies. Overcoming the challenges of this smaller market with a lot of competition, it was all about preparation. Basically, I believe that normally the professional salespeople that you're competing against and that are competing for your timeshare with your client or prospect, they have the desire, but it's the preparation. It's before you go into a meeting, are you focused on what they do as a business? Are you focused on and have you studied maybe what their financials look like this year? How does that tie into the solution that you're selling? Those are the kinds of things that I think truly help you overcome the challenges of a crowded market.
Next, the importance of mastering your message. How do you ensure your sales pitches resonate with clients across different industries?
So that's a good question. And it's something, listen, I made this mistake many times where I thought I had the pitch down, right? I had the mastering of the message. And I would go into a client and I would just jump into it and present. And I would walk out of that meeting and I would go, and it feels like they just didn't get it. It feels like they weren't connected to the message. And so mastering the message is not just being an expert on what you are selling, but it's also understanding and tying that to industry pain points, to pain points that you think and you may know that this customer or client has. So how do you get to those? Like before you just jump right into what you're trying to pitch, you've got to ask the questions. You've got to get to know the pain points. You've got to validate and then potentially have to pivot on that presentation based on what you're hearing. And so that was a early tough lesson that I had to learn to really help me be a better presenter and more relevant to the client.
Confidence in the technology you're selling is crucial. How do you instill this in your team, especially with newer or more complex products?
Yes, I think that ties into a couple of things that are very important within an organization. This is a really good question. I think one, you've got to have help from your cross-functional teams. So you've got to have support and help from your product leaders, product managers, your developers that give confidence to your teammates and to your team to say, hey, the technology that we've developed is the right technology. It solves a problem and it works, right? Engaging with your cross-functional teams to help them, have them help you build that confidence. The other thing that comes to mind here is customers give you confidence, right? So even in new technologies, when we follow a process of doing an alpha and then a beta with a customer, if you get one or two of those and a customer gets excited about that technology, that builds confidence as a salesperson for you to go rinse and repeat, right? You're like, wow, that one beta customer, even though it's a brand new technology, I was scared to sell. That one beta customer really bought in and saw the value. Now I can go rinse and repeat this across my market.
And in terms of building and maintaining a brand, How do you approach this both internally and externally at a remote lab?
Another good question. I like it, Adrian. You're coming at me here. From a brand perspective, this is something I'm really passionate about. And to start, you've got to ask yourself, you've got to ask people around you, and you've got to ask your customers, what's your brand? And you've got to be open to a concept that I believe in called radical candor. There's another book that I would recommend if you haven't read, which means you've got to be able to receive that feedback on your brand in a way that is accepting and not defensive, right? Human nature doesn't like to ask those types of questions because they're scared there's going to be a negative response. But you've got to ask, right? So I've got to ask my sales team, and I've got to ask my peers, my executive peers, my CEO, how am I doing? What's my brand? Is it good? Is it bad? Where can I improve? So you've really got to put yourself out there, be okay with having some constructive criticism come your way so that you can learn how to build that brand. From there, it's applying those improvements, right? It's not in one ear, out the other. It's diligently noting what feedback you get from customers, what feedback you get from your peers, and applying those. I've had an opportunity to spend a lot of time in marketing, again, studied it, and with some key brand marketing executives. And it's one of the biggest mistakes that brand marketing executives will say companies large and small make a mistake on is they just assume they have a brand and they just assume that's their brand instead of going out and doing the market research and having controlled interviews with their customers, with the people that interact that actually have maybe a different opinion on what their brand is or who they are. So you've got to ask, you've got to really get out there and understand it and not just assume. You know what they say about assuming, right?
Let's say that I'm a potential customer, right? And I'm looking at access control solutions and I'm looking at several companies. So I'm in a meeting with you and I'm asking you a question. The question is, why should I pick? Why should I choose remote lock?
Yeah, that's a great one. And I think I got into a blog discussion with another large industry name who works for me, Devin Wirt. Customers don't choose a brand like Remote Lock just because of what we do. I'll acknowledge there's many others out there that do what we do. So I start to go really right to the intangibles. It's, how long have we been in business versus maybe somebody else that's newer and doesn't really understand? It's, what kind of support are you going to get post sale? Are you going to get the type of white glove treatment that we believe is a differentiator for us? And then the other piece is you've got to have built that trust with that client. You can, at the top of your soapbox, scream as loud as you can about your value proposition, your technology value proposition. But if the person sitting across the table from you doesn't trust you or doesn't feel comfortable doing business with you, then you've missed the mark. And a lot of times when I answer that question, I look them in the eye and make sure that we've built that trust and we've got that kind of relationship.
What are some ways in which you build trust with a potential customer?
So again, I think it goes back to customers pick up quickly on whether your priorities and your selfishness is why you're there, or is it about them? And so making it about what the customer's needs are. I had one scenario, I'll give you an example of a customer that was a very large customer. They were in Minneapolis, very common household name. I was meeting with them and I realized we didn't have, for what they needed right now, we did not have the right solution. And so I basically cut the meeting short and said, hey, based on what I'm hearing and what your needs are, we can't solve those. And I actually recommended one of my competitors that could. And the customer would step back and lean back in their chair and wait a second, what? You're not acting like a salesperson. I'm like, no, I'm not here to sell you what I have. I'm here to solve your needs. And if I can't solve your needs, I'll let you know that. And I'll be upfront with you. And I think that transparency resonated. What happened was they did buy the competitor. And 2 years later, we actually did have a product that did fill all of their needs. They ended up coming back to me and being a longtime customer of mine because I had garnered that trust early on and walked away from business.
Very fascinating story. You're approaching a potential customer and you ask them to spare some time to talk to you about product services, to have a business meeting. How much would you ask for? How much would you need to make your case? Is it 15 minutes? Is it 30 minutes? Is it an hour, over an hour? How much do you typically hope for to get?
Yeah,
Why?
if it's an initial meeting, it's 25 minutes. Why I say 25 and not 30 is because I'm a big believer as I organize my day to always have time between meetings. So if they've got a meeting at the top or the bottom of the hour, I'm going to give them 5 minutes to be able to regroup and get ready for that next meeting, just like I want to have 5 minutes for my next meeting. But 25 minutes is plenty, right? You're really at the high level in that initial meeting, just spending time understanding their pains and understanding what they're doing and where they would like to improve. And do they have quote unquote needs, right? Specific needs that they want. Then from there, you can go off and have deeper dives and longer meetings. You're going to lose the attention of a customer if you're trying to get an hour of their time and they don't even know you and they don't even know what you do.
Are you a believer in a product or a service selling itself?
So it's another great question. I think there's an element again in sales of people buy from people. So it's not necessarily always about the product. But one of the things throughout my career, as I talked about, when I left EMC, I really studied those technologies and those companies. And it was important to me that it was a technology that did somewhat sell itself and that did somewhat resonate. Now, again, as a seller, if a product sells itself, what do we need salespeople for? So you still got to be able to, as a salesperson, navigate that product and what it does so great and tying that to the pain of the company or the prospect that you're talking to. But yeah, it's great to have strong technology. And that's always been a passion of mine is to work for companies that have a strong technology that's proven.
Aaron, we're in an election year, a big election year, and most companies, most customers are really very careful with how they're spending their money. They rather hold on until, I guess, they're getting the election results and see the direction the country will go towards based on who's going to win the presidential election, right? Mainly. So, question related to that, to this particular scenario: how do you encourage creativity and big thinking in a budget tight environment?
Yeah, that's a great question. And at the end of the day, I don't think those two necessarily go together. Matter of fact, I would argue that a lot of times in a budget type of tight environment where it's an election year, we all know right now in multifamily, we're dealing with very high interest rates, tight capital budgets. Those are all aspects of the natural tendency to not spend. But out of that breeds, I believe, new thinking and big thinking, right? Coming up with ideas on how to sell differently in those markets and in those environments a lot of times happens at those times. I've been through my 25 years, I've been through Y2K. Y2K, especially in tech, everybody was scared and nobody wanted to do anything. Everybody was focused on how all of our technical machines were going to crash come January 1 of and just thought differently. We thought, how can we maybe come up with a consulting offering to help consult with customers around Y2K? Right. So I think big thinking and new ideas is bred both from good times when the economy is great and spend is up and really tight budget times like we're in right now where spend is down and we've got to think differently on how we go to market.
Let's talk about risk taking. Could you discuss a risk that you've taken in a sales strategy that paid off more than you expected?
Yeah, interestingly enough, a story comes to mind when you talk about risk. And this is really tough. This is one of the things I try to teach is being able to take risks and being able to say no or walk away. I gave that one example. Another example, a sales rep came to me a few years ago, prior company, and let me know they wanted to fire one of their largest customers. They were a good customer of ours. They did almost 20% of the entire company's revenue, and they wanted to fire them. And it was because there was some really dysfunctional behavior, badgering, bullying, and so forth with this client and my salesperson. Not only with my salesperson, though, with other individuals within the company. So when anytime they would call into support, they would badger and belittle and bully our support individuals. When it came time to dealing with their invoices, they would belittle and badger our finance and accounts payable. And I sat down with the rep, understood what was going on, And I took a risk. I said, you know what? Let's set up a meeting. I've got an executive relationship with one of their higher ups. Let's set up a meeting with them. And we're not going to tell this individual that we work with on a day to day basis, that my sales rep worked with on a day to day basis. And we had that sit down with that executive. Big risk, right? It was one, we could very much irritate the person that we're going above because we're going above them. Two, we're really exposing somebody in their organization, in their own organization, and a lot of times calling somebody's baby ugly sometimes can be offensive. But we took the risk because to me, it was more important that I saved my sales rep, that I protected the culture of our company. And so we had the conversation with the executive. The executive came back at the end of the meeting, pulled me aside and said, Aaron, I can't thank you enough for being transparent about this issue. We had no idea. We've seen some of his behavior internally, but we had no idea he was putting you, your sales team, your finance people, your support people through what he was putting you through. And this just strengthened our relationship with this large client. He ended up moving the individual out of the organization, and we've had a great, strong relationship since.
Let's talk about balance next. Question is, how do you balance the sense of urgency required in a fast-moving market with thorough and strategic planning?
Another great question. This is very difficult, and especially when you're working for, as I have over the last 7 years, startups, small companies that have a very hard and aggressive growth plan and a sense of urgency. This all comes down to me to pipeline. And so, old sales manager of mine once told me, he's like, the best and most successful salespeople are those that don't show any signs of desperation, don't show any signs of needing a sale. And so, the only way you can have that mindset and be in that headspace as a salesperson is you've got to have enough opportunity out there to be okay that certain deals are going to push, certain deals are going to pull in, and you've got enough to be able to make it go around and to hit the aggressive, urgent sales goals that you've been given. And so this is really all about a numbers game. And the bigger your pipeline, the more comfortable you are not feeling that desperation or that urgency.
Aaron, what role does a connection, a good network plays into being successful in sales? How important that is in having a strong network?
Yeah, I think it's huge. I think it's absolutely huge. And for a couple of reasons. One, again, it ties back to your personal brand. If you have a strong network, it definitely is building and helps your personal brand. And so you've got trust, you've got an automatic kind of brand there. The other thing is learning from this network, right? Being able to have folks, I look at it and go, it's like I have certain skills that I believe I'm very good at. I also have a lot of weaknesses that I know that I can learn and improve upon. And so having a broad network that's very diverse, that everywhere where people in your network have different backgrounds, have different sales experiences, have different business experiences, really helps develop you as a well-rounded person and helps fill in gaps where you're weak, and you can learn from them and you can really become better by watching them.
How does one build a very strong network? What are some tips that you would like to share with audience?
Yeah, I think the first thing there is just getting out there and not being shy. And in this industry, you really shouldn't be shy. Hopefully you're not, but there's times where you get into a big room and you're a little bit worried about just walking around and meeting people. And I think you've got to really put yourself out on the skinny end of the branch there, maybe get outside of your comfort zone and just start shaking hands, meeting people. I think another piece of it is really using LinkedIn. LinkedIn is such a great networking tool for business, but looking at what people are posting. And if there's something that's insightful, not just liking, but making comments, actually reaching out to them on a personal with a personal message saying, "Hey, I really appreciate what you shared. Can you tell me more about this?" Making those connections will help build your network. And I think it also helps you learn, helps you get better.
Aaron, if you were to name one person, who is the person that had the most positive influence in your life and or your career?
All right, I'm gonna go take this two ways. So I'm gonna start within my life. I had a basketball coach. I played basketball all the way through high school and played college basketball for 2 years. But I had a basketball coach in seventh grade that really changed my mindset and he drove us. He was the toughest coach I ever had. He drove us hard, but he really had us focusing. And when you're, by the time you get to seventh grade and you're pretty good, you think, I already know how to dribble. I already know the basics. Like, we don't need to work on this anymore. And he was like, nope, every single day. In the summertime, he said, hey, you've got to shoot 10,000 shots every summer to just have this locked into your brain. And it ran, I think of use some examples. I'm a big, for those of you that don't know me, a big sports fan. I love studying the elite athletes. And if you look at the greats of my lifetime, Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods, they never knew it all. They never thought they knew it all. Every single day they went into their craft and their trade and they worked on the basics. They worked on the little things. Every little thing mattered to them. And I think that's a person who really has influenced the way I think and always being teachable every single day. From a career perspective, I would say it would be the longtime mentor and my manager that first hired me at EMC. His name is Dan Flood, great, great guy. And he taught me the like how to sell. So from a career perspective, he really put his arm around me and spent time with me on how to sell. And he was a master of it. Like, just going on sales calls with him and sitting there listening and watching made me better. And then the other element that he taught me was how to manage, and being all of the things I've been talking about today on my passions around brand and passions around extreme ownership. He taught me. So I would definitely say Dan Flood.
Aaron, we're only around for a limited period of time. Some will argue for a short period of time. So, how would you like to be remembered? Legacy.
Oh boy, that's a great question. And you're spot on. Life is fleeting, life is short. First and foremost, it's not about anything I do professionally. I do not want people to think, oh, Aaron was a great salesperson or great sales leader. I want it to start with, he was a great father. He was a great husband. He was a great son. He was a great brother. Those are the things that really are passions of mine and help me keep my life prioritized. It helps in the business sense because you realize when you have a tough day or when you have a tough loss, life goes on. The sun's going to come up tomorrow. What's really important? And so, I would definitely say he was a good father. He was a great family man, loved his kids, those types of things.
Aaron, as we're approaching the end of our conversation today, what are some things that you would like to share with the audience that you wish we would have covered during the conversation and we didn't?
I think we did a great job, and you asked a lot of really good, insightful questions. I think one of the things that I didn't hit on really is around the preparation piece. There's a quote from the great Bear Bryant. For those that are college football fans, he coached Alabama and put Alabama on the map as a dynasty for college football. He talked about it's not the will to win that matters, because at the end of the day, again, if you're in this industry or if you're out selling, you have that will to win. It's the desire to prepare to win are the things that really matter. And I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I would love to leave with the audience as a takeaway is, remember, preparation and doing the little things. Those are the things that matter.
It's been a pleasure to have you here today. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to be here with us, with
It was
me.
really a pleasure, Adrian, and you asked a lot of great questions, and I appreciate the time with you today.
Everybody, thank you so much for watching us today. I'm Adrian Danila, your host. This is Multifamily Chronicles, another episode. Wrapping up right now. We hope to see you back here soon. Have an amazing day.
See you, everybody.